Good evening. All right, I think we're going to get started. All right, welcome everyone. Glad to see all the faces here. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you to the people who are watching this, the recording later on at home as well. My name is David Sechi. I am one of the advisors for the class of 2024, so that's the reason why I'm leading us today. It's also the reason why you've received a lot of emails from me in the past several months, so please bear with me on that. I would like to welcome my team here so that we can all be introduced. Starting with, well, I guess Ms. Sellers is back there, so I'll start with Ms. Leah Jones, who's here in her 12th year at Cary Academy. Prior to coming here, Ms. Jones was served as a college counselor at 2 independent schools, and prior to that was an admissions officer at Duke University. She also is a parent of 2 Cary Academy students, one in the 10th grade and the other in the 8th grade. And then also Mr. Carter, Mr. Brandon Carter, who also serves as a college counselor and dean of 9th and 10th graders. So all the students here, you should know Mr. Carter by now. You've seen him several times. He was also the one who hosted all the seminar programs with you last semester. Prior to joining Cary Academy, Mr. Carter served in the admissions office for Chapel Hill, as well as serving as a member of the College Advising Corps in Charlotte. And Ms. Laura Sellers, who should be raising her hand somewhere in the back.
She was the welcome
Yeah, she was the one welcoming everybody, telling you where to get some cookies. Ms. Laura Sellers has been at Cary Academy. She's going into her 22nd year now, so that's a wealth of knowledge, kind of big institutional knowledge there. Prior to joining Cary Academy, she was also a member of the Duke Admissions Office, and she's shepherded her own two sons through the college admissions process years ago. And I'm David Sechi. I just joined Cary Academy last year, so this is my 2nd year in this office. Prior to joining Cary Academy, I was a member of the Duke Admissions Office as well, and I also served in the College Advising Corps in Garner Magnet High School in North Carolina. So, one more, there's one more member of our office who's not able to be here. That's Ms. Becca Hawk. So for all the students, you're going to get to know Ms. Hawk very well. She's going to be the welcoming face you see once you start navigating into our college counseling suite. She's going to be the person who's helping you kind of navigate all the logistics and any questions that you have. She's not able to join us today, but we are happy to have Ms. Hawk with us joining our team. She was previously a college counselor as well and also a career counselor. She brings a wealth of knowledge to just kind of help our team continue running. She is a part-time member, so you won't see her all the time, but she is a member of our team altogether. Right. So collectively, amongst the members of our team, the college counseling team, we do have over 20 years of experience in the college admissions process and even more in the college counseling field. So we are really excited to work with students throughout this journey, making sure that students are better served to navigate and find the best fit colleges for themselves, as well as to be able to have an opportunity to reflect and grow as they're going along this journey. So we do take pride in our work. We do want to make sure that every single student is served to the best of our ability. Right. So tonight's agenda, make sure this is going. So tonight's agenda, we're going to go through a few things with you to help you start to navigate this college journey for yourself. We're going to talk about what we do, so just what the college counseling team does here at Cary Academy, how you can learn to explore a good fit college for yourselves, and there's going to be some resources we share with you about what that process looks like for you in junior year, as well as understanding college costs. So that's something that we will touch upon as well to give you a little bit of information about navigating the college search with the cost in mind. We'll talk about how colleges make decisions to kind of give you a little bit of a preview for what that's going to look like when you actually get into the application process, and also some advice on looking ahead and what else is coming towards you all during this the rest of this academic year and going into your senior year. So one of the things that I'd like to actually remind you of, and if you came either to the presentation we did in March, or if you watched the presentation we did in March for the sophomore college night and course registration, one of the things that we mentioned was that you were all the seniors at that point, you were all kind of halfway through your high school journey. You were at the point where we would call it the college awareness point, which was the 9th grade and 10th grade years. And now you're all in the college search and application point of your journey. So we're really excited to have you at this point, have the opportunity to start thinking about the colleges that fit you, have the opportunity to work with a college counselor eventually, and start to navigate what colleges fit you and how to apply to those colleges. So in terms of what we do when we're working with students throughout the year. So we are going to be helping students formulate a list of colleges, through research, and to also be able to visit these schools and get a good feel for which ones fit them. Right, this is something we're going to be doing with students one-on-one once we begin those meetings in January, and there's more information that we'll be sharing about that. We're also going to help students create a timeline for meeting all the deadlines that are coming up to them during senior year. So this is something that we do work with students extensively to make sure that you don't miss any deadlines based on applications you're interested in applying, based on the schools you're interested in applying to. We do this for your sanity as well as for our sanity so that we can make sure that everything is moving on track. We're also going to support students in actually completing these applications. So this includes writing essays, helping them edit essays, and also helping them make sure that the activities are put together very well. They are able to highlight all the great things they've done at Cary Academy to be able to share with any admissions committee all the great things that they would be able to add to that college campus. And we're also going to guide them in helping to select the teacher recommendations that will best support the applications throughout, as well as our recommendations that will be going along with the application to the schools. Right, so these are just kind of a good overview of what the things that we do with students throughout the college search and application journey point of their time at Cary Academy. So this is something that we're going to start doing with students once we begin our one-on-one meetings later on in January. But first, one of the things that we want to make sure that we help, and this is what we're going to be doing throughout the journey with students, but one of the things we like to tackle ahead of time are some of the myths that you will be encountering throughout this process. One of the first myths being a good college. And this is something probably you may have heard, that good colleges are the ones that you've heard of. And we want to make sure that students are not hampered by this idea, because really the reality of this is that a good college depends on what it is that you're seeking. Right? Because there are a lot of really good colleges out there, right? But not all of them are going to be a great fit for a student. You might have heard about a lot of great colleges from your friends, family members, people you admire. That's great, but it doesn't mean that it's a good fit for you. And that's what we're here to help students do. That's what we're here to help you based on the things that you're interested in doing, based on the things that you share with us, the conversations you're going to be having with your college counselor, to really hone in on the things that are important to you to help make sure that the list of schools you're applying to are a good fit for you. Along with this, there are a lot of really great colleges out there that you might not know of, and that is where we also come in. That's how we help you really broaden your horizons and search for schools based on the criteria that you seek, and use that to really hone in on a list that presents the best experience for you in your collegiate years. Okay, so that's what we're going to be helping students do, really tackle this from a very personalized aspect of it, make sure that the list that we put together is for you, and also something that's really going to help you grow throughout your collegiate years. And while we're doing this, we're hoping that this is going to be helpful. That one. What we're doing is we're really hoping that this is going to be helpful for students to navigate this process by filtering out the noise, right? And there's going to be a lot of noise in this process. We know, now that you're a junior in high school, you're probably getting a lot of messages from people asking, where are you going to college? What are you thinking about? What are you interested in doing? We're going to be asking you a lot of those questions as well, too, so bear with us throughout the meetings. But we want you to really think very specific about what is it that you want, and also figure out how you want to talk to people about the college journey that you're on. Right? We are here to help you. We are here for you to vent to us if you have any questions, but you don't have to always feel as if you have to take in every single input. And there are a lot of opinions and a lot of things you can find, especially online, about the college admissions process. But we want you to really do this in a very healthy way. One of the 10 polls that I think all the students you're aware of is that at Cary Academy, we are trying to really make sure that students are thinking about this, their mental health, and this is one aspect of it. We want to make sure that students are going through the college application process still in mind that they're doing it in a healthy way for their own mental well-being. So we always want to make sure that students have a way to navigate all the noise that's that encompasses application searching, college searching and application creation. We want to be able to make sure that students have all the resources available to navigate that. So please, figure out. We're going to work with you again on this. Your college counselor is going to work with you on figuring out ways that you can navigate the conversations with people. Because as I said, we want you to be open. We want you to broaden your horizons, but we want you to do it in a way that's healthy for you. So we don't want you to feel as if you have to take in every single input around you. We want you to be able to take the ones that are really beneficial and helpful for you to guide you along the way to the best decisions that will reflect the things you want to do going forward in life. And I believe one of the things that I think I'm passing on to Ms. Leah Jones to kind of get us started on thinking about how to navigate this filtration.
Okay, so as Mr. Suchi said, our most important piece of advice to you in terms of filtering out the noise is to keep the focus on you. And think about not putting the cart before the horse. So a lot of times it's very tempting at this stage to start thinking about college names, the ones that you've seen on ESPN, the ones that are local, the ones that are on the recently announced, brand new recent US News and World Report rankings. Put that all aside for a minute and think about keeping the focus on you. Juniors, what's important to you? What do you value? In what environment do you thrive? What do you need to make sure that you are thriving academically, socially, emotionally? So there are some key factors that you can start to think about. Some of the more obvious ones are up here behind me. You might find that one factor is the overwhelming most important factor to you, or you might find that there's a blend of all of these, or there's a hierarchy, kind of, I definitely need this, I would really like this doesn't matter as much. So we're gonna take a look at a few of these categories tonight, just to get you started thinking. Okay, so it's easiest to start with location. Many of you, especially if you've grown up in this area, you know a handful of schools pretty well because there are local schools. So it's easy to kind of think about drawing maybe a circle or a radius. A lot of times it's pouring rain. I'm sure it'll be done by the time we're done. So sometimes families say, well, we want to kind of stay, and they'll look at a map and go, around here. Or students might say, I want to go over here. And it's a mix of those things. So, starting with location is an easy way to just sort of get started with coming up with ideas. How far from home? Parents and students, you might have different ideas about this. Maybe students want to be as far as possible. Maybe parents want to keep you within 20 minutes driving distance. Maybe in-state is a preference or even financially a necessity. Maybe out of the country is an option, or at least something worth exploring right now. Do you want a college town? Do you want access to museums and opera? Is that important to you? Do you just need a shopping mall nearby? Do you want more urban, more suburban? So just thinking about location and setting and weather. I am always shocked by how many students tell us, no, I cannot have cold weather. And maybe you're an athlete and you don't want to be running in the snow, and that's totally legit. Or maybe you want to be near snow because you're a skier. But think about, when you think about how you thrive, we genuinely have had students who, it's so loud. Can you hear me okay? Oh my goodness. Okay, I know, I'll just get a little closer. We've had students who have seasonal affect disorder, and they didn't know that till they went away to a really, really cold climate. Or they didn't know how darn cold the wind can really be in Chicago, the Windy City. So these are all things to consider. Weather is just weather. As many of us will say, you know what, you can put on a coat, there's heating, there's air conditioning in most places. But in terms of really students thinking about where you thrive, where are you your best self? Are you your best self when it's actually sunny the majority of the time? Or do you actually love a thunderstorm? Do you actually need to be able to be outside year-round? These are important things to think about. So those are kind of some easy factors to think about, because you probably at this point know yourself in terms of what kind of weather you like best, how far from home you might want to be, what kinds of social activities outside of school you like. So next we're going to move on to some more specific things around learning environment and school culture. So learning environment is a big one. How many of you juniors have been here since 9th grade? How many of you have been here since middle school? Okay, a fair number of you. So you know one type of learning environment, right? For the past 5 years at this point, 6 years, you've known one type of learning environment. You've known small classes, discussion-based, a lot of faculty attention. How many of you really, really love that and feel like you want to keep on with that when you go to college? For how many of you is that really important? A few of you. How many of you can't wait to be in a classroom where nobody notices if you're not there and you can just slink down in the back of the auditorium? Anybody willing to admit to that? Thank you, that's very brave. I appreciate your honesty. So it's a mix of both, right? So the truth is that at many, many schools, you're gonna have that full range. You're gonna have the opportunity to be in a big lecture class or a small class, but The size of the college may dictate how many of your classes are those huge lecture classes and how many of your classes are smaller classes. So that's something to think about. If you know you do better when you have a lot of personal attention, you may want to look at some smaller schools. If you know you're going to be just fine in a crowd of thousands, then you might be comfortable in a bigger school. There's no right or wrong choice, just sort of keeping in mind that the impacts of looking at a bigger school or a smaller school. Culture-wise is something to think about too. And when we say culture, we mean a number of things. We mean perhaps a political culture, perhaps a social culture. So a school might be politically conservative or socially liberal or some combination therein. Some schools have big-time sports culture, a big-time fraternity sorority culture. Other schools have a very activist sort of culture. So if you are somebody who knows that the feel and the vibe of a school is really gonna matter to you, that's worth thinking about too. And that's where visits, which I'll talk about in a minute, are gonna be a little bit more helpful to you to try to get a sense of that vibe of a school. Sometimes students will say to us, you know, when I just set foot on campus, all of the criteria I thought it had the size, it had the setting, it had the weather, but when I got there, it just didn't feel right. Other students will visit a bunch of schools and say, they all kind of felt the same to me. I don't think that's gonna matter to me. So you may be somebody who has a visceral reaction to things, or you may be somebody where as long as it's on paper, it gives you the programs you want, you're good. Again, this all varies a lot from student to student. Special interests are something else to think about. Some of you may know that you hope to pursue sports in college, or you want a music conservatory, or an art conservatory, or maybe you want to keep the door open for engineering, and not every school offers engineering, or architecture, or nursing. If you have some potential interests that not every school offers, that's worth putting on your criteria list as well to make sure that you're including schools, not to rule out things that don't have them yet, but that you're including schools that will give you options that you think might be appealing to you. Again, the key is to focus on what's important to you. So again, there might be one factor that outweighs all others. It might be cost. It might be the need to stay close to home. Or it might be the need to be far away from home. Or it might be the need to look at Division II basketball schools. At the heart, you should ask yourself, where am I going to be my best self? Don't worry about what other people are talking about. Don't worry about who you don't know that's ranking colleges out there on some criteria that means nothing to you. Think about where you're going to be your best self. Also, know that what you value leads to finding schools that fit you best and will help you present yourself in a compelling manner once you're at the application phase, which we will help you with. But finding the schools on the front end that really fit you will make the application the application completion much easier. And finally, know that your criteria will evolve. What you feel like now will change. I just got an email from the mom of an advisee of mine who graduated in 2021, and he was 100% sure he was interested in marine science when he left here. He's now going into nursing. So things will change. You'll be exposed to wonderful new things that you've never taken before, new classes, new professors, new classmates. So just know that things will continue to evolve. Don't hold yourself to too stringent a standard. And once you've moved through this self-audit, the next step is to learn what's out there. So we're gonna give you a little bit there in terms of how do you find out what's next? Let's say you already know a number of these things and you say to me, Ms. Jones, I can answer all of those little bubbles up there, so now what do I do? Well, there are a couple of ways you can learn more. Some of them involve traveling, and some of them you can do from the comfort of your own home. So first, learning what's out there in terms of visiting. We wanted to point out that there's some days in the fall, if it happens to work out for your family, to do a little bit of visiting, maybe even locally, within perhaps an hour radius or an hour and a half radius. We have plenty of great universities that will give you prototypes of different types of schools. You can see a big urban school and a small rural school, all within an hour and a half of here. You can see a school that's a Division I sports school and a school that has a working farm, all within a couple of hours of here, which is wonderful. So if you have a chance to actually visit and get a sense of prototypes, some of the days that are available, students, you have September 26th and 27th, so a 4-day weekend while we're in faculty professional development. So again, September 26th and 27th. You also have Wednesday, October 5th off from school, and you also have Monday, October 24th off from school. So several days in this first kind of quarter of the year, if it's possible for you to maybe do a local visit. It's great to start local to just get a sense of things before you invest in a trip that's really far away. You may not get a chance to visit schools in California until you apply to them and get in. It may not be cost effective to do so, but there's plenty to see really close to home. We have some resources for you for planning your trip on Blackbaud, and I think Ms. Sellers is gonna show you Blackbaud, or Mr. Carter is gonna show you Blackbaud in a little bit, but there's a junior college counseling resource page, and we have several resources there, including a college visit clusters list, which is really helpful in grouping colleges of different types by major metropolitan certain area in the country. So if you know you're going to go visit grandma at Thanksgiving in Michigan, we can give you some schools that are kind of within a radius of perhaps Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we suggest that you consult that as you think about potentially planning for some bigger breaks down the road. We also have a sheet to give you guidance on what kinds of questions to ask on your visits, and also a sheet for evaluating your visits so you take notes. Especially if you start visiting lots of schools, you want to take notes, otherwise it will all start to blend together. So we do recommend those resources. In terms of what you can do, when you first start out with an information session and a tour is a great way to start. A tour especially, the information sessions start to sound the same after a couple, but walking around with a tour and getting the opinions of a current student is always very helpful. And then feel free to kind of hang out. Go to the common hangout spaces like the student union, pop into the dining hall, look at the town surrounding and see what there is to do so you can start to get a feel for what the environment is like, what that vibe is like. If you're not able to visit, which is totally fine, there's a lot that you can do right from here. First of all, we have college reps coming to CA every day before school through the fall and on C days as well. How many juniors have already attended a college visit? Awesome, thank you. How many of you already signed up to host a visit? Excellent. Thank you to the junior hosts. Parents, we wanted to just give a little shout out to our junior hosts. It's a program we started a few years ago and that we've continued now that we're back in-person visits. We want every junior to have the chance to get comfortable talking to an admissions officer so that low stakes, right? May not be a school that you're necessarily even interested in, but you get practice kind of asking questions, figuring out what admissions officers tend to say so that you can get comfortable with sort of the baseline of learning about colleges. We actually ask every junior to sign up to host a visit, and if we don't get a host volunteer for a particular visit, then Mr. Secchi co-ops somebody and volunteers them. So the goal is that every admissions officer has a chance to meet a CA student rather than just talking to us, and every student gets a chance to talk with an admissions officer. So we have lots of visits, 65 and counting, coming through this fall. You register through your SCORE account for the visit. We also have lots of college-sponsored virtual programming out there. If you check the junior college counseling page, you'll see a plethora of opportunities that colleges are constantly letting us know that they're having on-campus and virtual programming. There is still a lot of virtual programming out there. So if you want to learn about University of Toronto without leaving Cary, North Carolina, you can still do that. And finally, there's some great search engines out there. Students, you just got introduced to SCORE, and Ms. Sellers is going to go a little bit more into depth about the power of what SCORE can do for you. So I'm going to hand it over to her.
Thanks, Ms. Jones. Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Sellers. I missed the introductions. I was out front directing people to the cookies without the napkins and the handouts, which Mr. Carter will describe. So, here it is. Great. As Ms. Jones said, SCORE was just introduced to the junior students in a class meeting recently, and most of you have already signed up for it. If you haven't yet, please do so. Or if you're confused about how to do so, just let us know and we can help. So for students, a short review, and for parents who may be new to SCORE, what is it? It's a student management system for the college search and then application process. And I just want to highlight a couple of quick things from it. Again, Mr. Secchi did a brief demo with it with students, but one of the great powers of it is a search engine that's phenomenal. So as Ms. Jones was saying, if you're on the way to see a family member over the Thanksgiving break or over the February break, and you wanted to say, okay, I'm going up to Baltimore to see Uncle Brandon, what might I see on the way up there? I might want to see a mid-sized school, which could be University of Richmond in a suburban area. Might want to see a couple of big urbans like VCU in downtown Richmond, or George Mason University, a public right outside in Fairfax of DC, or maybe a couple of DC schools. Maybe you're really into STEM and you want to see University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is incredibly strong for STEM and the sciences. But college, the SCORE search engine will let you search by radius from a place, by miles, along a route, by a particular major. Perhaps you want to put in some of the criteria that Ms. Jones just reviewed and just see a little bit more beyond what you already know. And again, we will help you with this in terms of developing a list, but just as you sort of start exploring, that's one of them. And then each of the schools has incredibly rich resources in terms of a profile. So a student says, okay, these are the schools around Baltimore I might want to look at. What do I need to know about them? Each one will have you information about student life, about the admissions data, about academic programs. What percent of students might be majoring in areas in the social sciences or in business or in health-related fields or so on. So lots of great resources and tours and visuals as well. So kind of a one-stop shop for learning, kind of discovering and learning some initially about some schools. It is where Ms. Jones said you also will sign up to do a visit, one of the visits at CA. And for parents, if that wasn't clear, we've got about 70 college representatives coming to campus for the first time since fall of 2019. They're coming in person. I hosted one of the meetings this morning, the Emory University rep, and he was so excited. He was really nervous. This is the first time I've been in front of students live since fall of 2019. And juniors, you were great. Thank you very much. The visits I've sat in on, really impressed by the questions you're already asking. And the benefit of going to those visits is that you hear other questions from maybe the seniors or from others that help you start thinking about, okay, which of these things actually matters to me? What do I want to learn more about in terms of what makes a school distinctive and maybe bubble up a little bit more for me? So those are there. And the third thing is U-Science. Free on SCORE is this incredible career profile tool. It's under career profile. That makes a lot of sense. Students, if you like doing those like online Myers-Briggs, 16 personalities, find my, career or personal match in the future or whatever, this one's a little more in depth. What it does is it takes a look at your aptitudes and your interests, like what you're innately good at, what you actually are interested in. And it takes about 90 minutes, but there are individual 11 different little games, brain games that you can do. And you can do it over whatever period of time you want. About 12 hours after you complete it, you'll get a really impressive report that helps you think a little bit about how do I work best with people, maybe in school settings and labs and whatever. A little bit about personality inventory, and also something you see up there, careers and best fit careers. And so it says, based on what you've put in here in terms of your interests and your aptitudes, these might be things that you might want to think about. We don't like that some of the titles of them are fairly specific, and by no means do we want you to think, well, these 15 things are the things that I must do with my life. Not at all. But the idea is simply to help you to be reflective, a little more self-aware, thinking about what do I like? What am I good at? What sort of things maybe have I not thought of that might be out there? Why is it good for you guys? What do juniors get to do in May? Anybody remember? Instead of discovery term? Work experience program. Yeah, for 2 weeks in May, juniors have the option to do a 2-week work experience program in a field of potential interest. So stay tuned. We're going to be offering some X-Day activities to help you kind of look into U-Science, which we hope will help you think about what requests you might want to put in to Dr. McElreath, who's the point person to help schedule those work experience programs. X-Days are a great time to do this sort of exploration as well. Now, having said all that, want to go to one of our other myths. Whoop, going back. Am I going forward? I'm going the wrong way. Help. Which way do I need? Oh, here we go. Now we're stuck. All right. You've seen the whole program. Bear with us. Okay, now, let's see if we can get it. Where is the myth? There it is. All right. Juniors, raise your hand if anyone's ever asked you, what do you want to do with your life? Yeah. Every single one of you, since who knows at what age. And that is one of the most common myths that we hear, is the sense that I have to know what I'm going to major in before I apply to college. The reality, at least in the U.S. higher education system, is not so. Again, here I go, getting way ahead of myself. All right, so if you were at school in another country, in the UK, at this age as a high school equivalent junior, by now you would have picked maybe 2 subjects that you would be pursuing at university, A-levels or O-levels. Other countries, similarly, you need to narrow down by the time you're in high school what you're going to study. So for example, you might at this point have decided, if you live somewhere else, I'm going to do mathematics and philosophy. No more world languages for me. No more science for me. No more English for me, literature. These are going to be the 2 things I'm going to carry forward. And that, I understand, is something that a lot of students in a lot of countries have to do. But in the U.S. system, That is not the norm. The vast majority of colleges and universities in the country give you until the end of your second year of college to choose a major. Now, there's some things that are, like Ms. Jones mentioned, direct majors. Like if you're thinking engineering or nursing or architecture, often those are direct admit programs, and you do apply specifically to that college when you apply next year. But the vast majority of schools, you do have a year or more to declare a major, and then most students are going to find they're going to change majors. They're going to, like the student that Ms. Jones just referenced. I had a student, I remember Eric Eubanks, who went to school. He took geology, what he thought would be the soft science course to satisfy a science degree, because he was going to be a political science major and go to law school. He is now a geologist with a PhD in geologist because he fell in love with geology. Did not expect that to happen. So a lot of schools do encourage you to explore other areas. They give you time to declare your major. And sometimes you might change your major, add a minor, or whatever. So a quick, just parents, we've asked students a lot of questions by show of hands. How many of you changed your major at least once, parents in college? Okay, students, look around. That's a lot of them. And if I could ask one more question, how many of you are doing how many's career has not been directly tied to your college major? Okay, so again, time to explore. That doesn't mean, just to wrap that up, I want to underscore, we do want to encourage students to be thinking again about sort of, what do I like? What am I good at? Having some awareness, being curious about those things. But we do want to reassure you that is something you don't need to know before you apply to college. All right, money. This is not the glitzy fun thing. This is not quads or campus or weather or location. This is not college sports. Money is hard. Money is not the funnest topic to talk about, but it is so important. And it needs to be something we would suggest, we would plead, we would ask that it is one of the criteria that families consider. And if it's not something that you've kind of started really putting out there to talk about before, this is a really good time in the junior year to do so. Obviously, that's a little late to start thinking about the college cost factor. So college cost, just to lay the kind of groundwork, if this is your first child going through the college search since you were in college, sticker price is the norm, and be prepared for it. Just as a baseline, kind of rough in-state publics, UNC is so fortunate to have 16 schools in our system that are phenomenal, and the value is outstanding. Pretty much the cost of any of our in-state schools, NC State you see up there, UNC Wilmington, Charlotte, Asheville, App State, UNC Chapel Hill, are all going to be no more than a year at Cary Academy. That's total cost, tuition, room. Students, they refer to room and board. That means food and a place to live on campus. Expenses of another ways too. And then in terms of kind of the way it ticks up, you see an out-of-state public, Clemson University, which is a public, but it's not in North Carolina, it's in South Carolina, so we pay more. We'll pay more for any other school, public school in any other state system. So University of Michigan, University of Indiana, Ohio State, James Madison University, Virginia Tech. They're going to be more like 50 to 60, maybe up to 70,000. Privates will range dramatically. Just in North Carolina, Elon, right down the road, is about 60,000 or a little under. Duke, which is typical of many private colleges and universities, now over 80,000 a year. That's $320,000 for 4 years if prices don't go up, but we are not surprised to know that they do. So cost is something definitely to be thinking about in terms of how that is going to, what sort of, for parents, having conversations about what sort of parameters you might want to put on that. And a lot of our families might say, we can do an in-state public. We can probably go up to maybe $40,000 a year. We can feel comfortable with that given our savings and our resources or whatever, so some might say that. But above that, you can apply other places, but understand that your choice is going to be very much part of what the cost is. And a lot of families are going to sit down and talk to students about, are you thinking about graduate and professional school? Which many of you are. And if you are, and if these are the resources we've saved, how do we want to see that go through? If you're looking at graduate school, where will that leave the student if all of it is spent or if there's significant debt to incur for undergrad? So again, not the fun topic. I drew the short straw, but a really important one. So in terms of ways to learn more, resources, to get a benchmark for where you might fall your family's resources. We've talked about these since 9th grade or even earlier, but this is the year. This is the year that matters. 2022 tax return is the tax return you will use to apply for your child sitting right next to you or somewhere in this room or wherever, first year of college. So they're going to start college in fall of 2024. It's this tax return that you'll use. And it's a great time to take last year's you can use for now, the 2021, and sit down and Google, pick your college or university, pick a couple in our backyard, pick Wake Forest University and NC State, Google their net price calculators, put in that data to see, get an estimate of, okay, their cost is $75,000. What are they saying we can contribute for 1 year? That's what those resources, those calculators will show you. And it can be really helpful just to kind of get a sense of, for many of you, if you were like my husband and me when we did this with our sons, it was a shock. Colleges will say, don't worry about the cost. We guarantee to meet 100% of demonstrated need. What they fail to mention is how they determine your need or our need. And that was the surprise. And having worked in admissions for a decade before I got to this process, I had stood up there and said that exact same thing. Oh, don't worry about the money. We guarantee to meet 100% of your family's demonstrated need. And, you know, when I was going through it initially, I was like, that sounds pretty good. And then you start putting the numbers into these calculators and you go, oh, they think that's how much we need? That's a little bit of a surprise. So we encourage you to do that. Another resource is SmartTrack. We hosted a program with them last Tuesday. If you missed it, don't worry. It's online on the Blackbaud page, and if you have trouble finding it, just let us know. What they offer is just a kind of advising for families. That you can do an initial assessment, you put in some information, you can get a 20-minute free consultation. In that call, they will tell you if they think they can help you. Because a lot of times the things that we might do for our tax returns doesn't actually help in terms of applying for need-based financial aid in college. And so they can talk about how the distribution of your assets might affect aid eligibility in your family and give you some clarity on that. For a set fee, it's not free, it's not cheap. It's about $400 and some, but they will see you through multiple meetings to help you sort of understand that. It's not for everyone. Not everyone needs it at all, but it's just another resource that we wanted to let you know about. Okay, so in closing, that was a lot, and that was the not fun stuff to talk about, but I want to just sort of wrap up this section on how your criteria, just to remind students, to tell you that in our philosophy, there are so many great colleges and universities. In the US alone, hundreds of excellent colleges and universities. We believe deeply there is not one perfect school for any one of you. There are some great schools out there, and what we want to encourage you to do is take this kind of mentality, this idea of developing my list with the criteria important to me to help you and let us help you find 5 to 6 to 7 first choice schools. Not just one, but a number of places that'll be a great match for you and a great fit for you, and then to support you when you're applying to those schools too. We like to say Cary Academy students bloom where planted. We've all had the advantage of being here long enough or hearing about the stories of alums long enough to know that students might end up at a school that wasn't necessarily even on their radar when they were sitting in the seat you're in now as a junior. It might not have even been a school they'd heard of. Or in some cases, maybe not in their top 3 school choices, but they come back and they let us know that they've had incredible experiences and that they've really found their home. And it's all tied to so much about what you do, where you go, and how you engage there. So we are here to help and support you in that, and we are very excited and looking forward to that with the class of 2024. And Mr. Carter is going to take to go over the last slides that I've already shown you in terms of colleges making decisions. Thank you.
So typically at this point, the New York Giants are 0-1 or 0-2, and I'm a little bit more solemn right now, but I'm feeling good because Danny Dimes came through. We're 1-0 right now, baby. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't watch football, it's fine. I'll send you a link later. Ms. Jones talked about a lot of the factors and the qualities and things that you want to consider in a college and when you're thinking about building your college list. On the other side of that, colleges are also thinking about how are they going to build the most appropriate class and what factors are going what factors are going to be important for them, and that's going to vary by colleges. But typically, what you're going to see is those items up there on the screen. You'll hear this thing when you start to go around to colleges. Maybe you've already visited some, you sat in on some information session. They talk about holistic admissions. Holistic meaning that there's not one compelling factor or one or two of those up there on the screen that they're going to pay attention to in order to make a decision on how to build a nice class that's coming in. They're going to weigh all of those factors in a given application, right? So when you go to put all of your things, your transcript, your recommendation letters, all of those factors up there, they're going to weigh all of those factors together, also taking into consideration their institutional priorities, what's important for their class, how to build those things. For example, if a school has just opened up a new computer science department, guess who they're going to be looking for in that next enrolling class? They're going to be looking for some students who are interested in their program because they're trying to put quote unquote butts in seats, right? So those things are important. You want to listen to those things in terms of that holistic admissions. Competitive doesn't just stop there. So some students will say, well, I have the numbers, right? I can look at my grades, I can look at my test scores, I'm competitive for this school. And that very well may be true. You might be competitive for that college. But there's also a part of that comes into play about being compelling, which is where that narrative is really going to come in, which is why we talk about why showing up every day in your classes is important, why treating other people with respect, integrity, and compassion. Guess where we found that from? Colleges actually appreciate those things too. So we're trying to build those qualities in you so that you can show your best self on that paper. So when that admissions counselor gets it, they can say, okay, great. I know academically they can do the things that we're going to ask them to do. They're going to be able to handle the rigor here, but they're also going to be a good person. They're going to be a good classmate. They're going to be a good roommate. They're going to get involved on my campus because I don't just want a student who's going to wake up in the morning out of their residence hall, go to class, study, leave class, go back to their dorm room and study some more. They want students to be the vibrant lifeblood of the school, and they need that from you. And so that's where a lot of these elements will start coming into play. They're trying to read those tea leaves in that application, all right? But most colleges, if you're going to twist our arm and say what's going to be the most important, transcript is king. It is where you are going to show your academic heft or your performance over the last 3 years. Because keep in mind, when you're applying as a senior, they don't know what grade, they don't have any grades at that point, right? So that's the fall. They are looking at 9th grade, yes, 9th grade counts, 10th grade, and even some schools are going to lean a lot more heavily on that 11th grade year. Why? A lot of you are taking advanced courses now. Advanced courses are taught at the rigor and pace of college level courses. So they're seeing, okay, you've done really, really well the first 2 years of high school. Now you've kind of leveled up in those classes, and you have like more responsibilities outside the classroom. You're a lot more mature. They're trying to see, are you going to keep that upward trajectory? Are you going to keep riding high and on that wave in terms of your academic performance? They're going to be able to see that in your on your transcript. So most colleges, if not all of them, are going to tell you that the high school transcript is the most important to them. Surprisingly, the second thing where most colleges will tell you that's the second most important, teacher recommendations. Teacher recommendations. That is, as one former admissions dean of Tulane University calls, the flashlight. They are going to give you a snapshot of what you may bring to their classroom. You're showing that in a teacher recommendation of that science teacher or that English teacher, or whatever class you decide, the subject you choose in terms of your teacher recommendations. Most colleges are going to require one. Some don't require any, some are optional, right? But for the most part, what we've seen is most colleges are going to require one, some require two. And again, it's going to go back to that flashlight. They're going to give you a snapshot in place to that admissions counselor of how you behave in the classroom. You're also going to have a counselor recommendation from us. So when you work with your primary college counselor, we're learning from you, we're understanding what your values are, all of those good things, which is why we love this job so much, because we get to know you, but it also serves a purpose. It helps us to craft a really great recommendation letter on your behalf for your colleges, and we like to call that the floodlight. We're giving the college basically the wider view of how this student fits and has performed in the Cary Academy greater community. So we're going to offer those opportunities. I was just talking to a senior a few weeks ago, and they said, well, I've secured my recommendation letters, and they've agreed to write for me. So when do I get to read those? I said, you don't. And they said, what? I was like, no, you signed a waiver on FERPA. There's a whole bunch of things. We'll explain that when you're a senior. But you don't get a chance to read your recommendation letters. We're going to help you decide on who you probably want to ask in terms of your recommendation letters, but you're really trusting yourself that I've shown up every single day in that class, or majority of the days, right? We all have our bad days. I've shown up every single day, and I've been the best student that I possibly can be. I've been a great group mate. I've been a great classmate, and my teacher is going to see those things, and then if I ask for a recommendation letter, guess what they're going to write about? Those great things in that letter. So that's why we say it's so important, especially this year. Most recommendation letters from teachers come from the junior year. So if you have been a knucklehead 9th and 10th grade, now's your chance, right? Junior year, you can take it by storm. You might have got off to a rocky start. And, we're at the beginning of the school year. We've had a couple classrooms, right? Like, you kind of been slouching in the back here and there. You're sitting up now, right? You've heard it. Junior teachers are usually the ones who are writing your recommendation letters for colleges, so please take that in consideration when you're going throughout the rest of this school year. Activities. No hierarchy amongst these. I usually have students, sometimes even in 9th grade, they'll come, because I'm 9th and 10th grade dean, they'll come in and they'll say, well, I have these two activities that I really, really want to do. Which one looks better to colleges? And I always turn it back to them and say, well, which one are you most interested in? Because you're going to put the most time, you're going to put more time and more energy and more faith into that activity, which then is going to lead that faculty advisor or maybe that passing teacher to understand your commitment and your values to that activity, and it's going to shine in that application, right? Versus I tell you to go do this activity or your college counselor tells you to do this, you have no interest in it whatsoever. You just heard that it looks good. So thus you show up and you're like this, take and roll, checking the time to see when you can leave, right? That doesn't really sound like impact to me. And that's the key word, impact. Colleges want to see what impact are you making in these activities, in the classroom as well, but also in these activities. Quality over quantity every single time. I have students always trying to stretch themselves. There's only 10 spots that you can list in terms of activities on a common application, and they're always trying to stretch it to get to the 10. And I'm like, if you give me a good 4 or 5 that you can show how the impact that you've made in those, I'm good with that. And a college admissions counselor is going to be good with that as well. We can tell, an admissions counselor, and we were all admissions counselors, we can tell when you're stretching. We can tell it. We can tell when you don't necessarily really care about that activity, that you were just really showing up because somebody told you to. It comes through loud and clear. So do yourself a favor, cut down. You're going to have to make choices going into junior year. You have advanced courses, you have other responsibilities. You're going to have to make choices in terms of where you're going to spend your time and effort, and that's a good thing, right? And you also need to balance your mental health, and you also need to balance family time and all those other good things. So keep that in mind in terms of activities. Personal qualities, character matters, surprise. Colleges want nice people, right? They want people that are actually looking out for others, looking out for their community and doing good things in that. I would even say the smaller the incoming class for a college, the more they care about character, the more they care about those personal qualities. So when you think about that, the smaller the class, that school has to get it right more often than they got it wrong, right? When it's a large public institution and a lot of students are coming in, if they lose a couple here and there, they're probably not going to lose sleep over it, right? But a smaller college is going to be more concerned, so thus they have to get it right in admissions more often than they get it wrong. So just keep that in mind in terms of personal qualities. The thing that I haven't mentioned yet that you're probably wondering is testing, right? Some notes on testing to start off with before we get into the nuts and bolts. Testing was slowly falling out of favor with colleges before the pandemic, and the COVID-19 pandemic just sped that train up. What they're noticing colleges are realizing is that they can build a really welcoming class and a class that fits the values and priorities of them, and they don't necessarily need to focus on that test score anymore. Now, does that mean that testing is absolutely going to go away and the whole, program is just going to shut down, SAT and AC and College Board is going out of business? I wish, but not right now. So that's still an element that you want to consider. Many colleges are still in their test optional windows. So if they require testing before the pandemic, they're still 3 years, 5 years out. We're going to do test optional, and then we'll let you know year by year, or if we're going to pick it back up for another 3 years of going test optional. And some colleges have already made the move to being test optional permanently. They're not going back to requiring testing. So again, hear me, test optional means if you do have tests and you're strong and you can show a strength in that in the SAT or the ACT, then you should do that. And we're going to still recommend testing in that way, especially for those students that it serves them well. But one thing that colleges want you to recognize is that it is no longer the end-all be-all of your application. If anything, it's probably lower on that pole of importance for them more than any other time for colleges. So that should give you a sigh of relief to recognize that all the other qualities that we just talked about on the previous slide are what's important. We still recommend testing, namely because the major players, we're still waiting, especially the University of North Carolina public system. We have so many students who will apply to our public colleges in state, and we want you to have a test score if they decide to go back to testing. Right now they are test optional, but eventually through the class of 2024. So it is test optional for you. So we can trust that, hopefully, that they won't go back on their word. But yes, test optional for you. But again, testing can serve as a strength if it is a strength for you. If you get to the point where you're doing testing and it's just not working, it's giving you too much anxiety, or you're just beating your head up against a wall of trying to hit a certain mark, then go do something else with your time. Talk to your college counselor about what's going to be the best plan for you moving forward with what particular colleges that you're applying for. So a little bit of the nuts and bolts. All the juniors, all of you, are going to take the PSAT on October 12th. You are already registered for that, so there's nothing you need to do. That is going to qualify you for the National Merit Scholarship Program. So you will take that test. It's going to give you some added practice before maybe possibly heading into your first SAT. And then if you are going to be deciding if you want to take the ACT, then you've also had some practice in that as well from the past spring when we took the practice ACT. All right. For more detailed testing information, some of you grabbed a handout when you came in. We have a testing timeline FAQ, so that's going to answer a lot of those questions that you have. But again, you can always follow up with us. You also received the college counseling program overview, so you can kind of take a look at that. That also goes over our roles and the things, how we're going to support you through this journey. But you got a lime green sheet of the test dates for the SAT and the ACT. Please keep in mind, these are dates to give you choice. You are not taking the SAT and ACT on every single one of these days, all right? You look at your calendar, you're gonna look at your travel schedule, all of those good things, and you're gonna make sure what fits you in terms of when you're planning to take the test, all right? I hope we're clear on that. All right. Blackbot, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I know all of you are just going to rush out and look at this page as soon as you get home if you haven't already. So one-stop shop for a lot of great information. We've kind of already mentioned it, but that's what it looks like, and you can get a wealth of information there. Recommended reading. Sorry, the mic is attacking me. Recommended reading. To provide a reset or reminder of how to frame this search. So for some of you parents that have already went through this, obviously you're kind of fresh on those heels. For some of you that are first timers, these are great resources, but again, still great resources also if you're going through it for the second or third time, maybe things that you haven't considered, or maybe because the landscape has kind of changed, especially coming out of the pandemic, still great resources that we recommend to parents. Frank Booney's Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be is a fan favorite. We had a parent a few years ago who actually read this book cover to cover after hearing it at junior college night, and it completely changed his perspective on the college process and how he also treated his student, his daughter at that time, and how they approached the college process. It made them a lot closer, and a lot more sanity was brought through it. So we really, really like that piece of literature. The Fifth Guide to Colleges. Quick and helpful on almost every college underneath the sun. We pull this, the lime green book there in the center, we pull this out frequently when we want students, when they say, well, I don't really know what I want. Okay, great. here's college A, here's college B. Read these 2 pages and let me know what stood out to you, what you liked, what you didn't like. It's a really, really helpful resource. You can find that in your local library, or you can come up to the college counseling room and we'll let you borrow ours. The truth about college admissions. Ms. Sellers is a big fan of this, and if that means she's a big fan of it, it's a really good book. So I'm gonna recommend that because she knows all. All right? If your attention span is too short for a book, me, right? The Georgia Tech admissions blog, really, really helpful. Rick Clark is a gem. He writes gems. He puts them out almost every week now, especially during the fall. So that's a resource that we highly recommend, and we've inserted those into newsletters, so you can probably look forward to those moving forward as well. So, what's ahead? So we already talked about attending college rep visits at CA. You're actually going to have a questionnaire. Parents, you're going to have a questionnaire, and students are going to have a questionnaire. We're going to release those in December, and you're going to have the break along with a few other weeks to get that completed. We love these questionnaires because it is the jumping off point for us learning about you. So we don't have to ask any and every single question underneath the sun to get to know you in our first couple of college counseling meetings. We kind of get a preview of who you are if we aren't already, acquainted with you. So we're going to ask for you to complete those prior to our meetings. Parents, we do welcome your insight as well. That's where a lot of the things that come into play of things you want to tell us, but you haven't necessarily found the courage to tell your kid, right? We often get that information in the parent questionnaire. It's like, don't tell them I said this, but when they were 5, they were amazing, right? Like those things, those really cute things make you want to grab their cheeks. You can't do that now because, they're teenagers. They don't really like that. You can add those things in the parent questionnaire along with other important factors that's going to help us support your student. The junior college kickoff is in January. We'll send out a lot of information about this, but essentially it's going to kick off the meetings before we start them individually with you. We have a dean's panel. We answer a lot of questions. It's a really great event. So you'll get more information about that. We also have our bread and butter is our individual meetings. So those are going to start in January. Again, like I mentioned, we get those questionnaires, and then we hit the ground running with you. Mr. Suchi told you what our responsibilities are, and we really take pride in them. We really enjoy this job, and we really enjoy getting to know you all. So you can look forward to that. One time. Okay. Ooh, almost. Advice for students and parents. Parents, be clear with your child about limitations, financial or otherwise. This is a great time to have those conversations prior to your student falling in love with that really expensive school or that school that's in Southern California, and you're like, oh, how do we tell them that he can't go? Have that conversation now, and then also have that conversation again and frequently as you're going through the process, not so frequent that they start to tune you out, but frequent enough to where they understand where your financial situation looks like, and also what your preference is for them in terms of how far away they go away from home, all of those good things. It's good and healthy to have these conversations, talking with each other, not at each other. That's important, right? Students, reflect on your interests and values and focus on what matters to you. Doing those reflection pieces right now, taking some time to think about what your values are prior to this will allow you to stay grounded when you start looking at actual colleges and you visit them, so that then when you are on campus and when you are learning about them, you can say, nope, that's a value that doesn't really fit with me. I already confirmed that, so I'm going to look elsewhere. Or, no, this is really important to me, so I'm going to add that college to my list, right? But above all, did I miss? Oh, okay. Above all, please don't let it dominate. There are so many other things to talk about. We're college counselors, and we don't talk about college all day, right? As soon as I get in my car and I go home, I'm with my son, and we're playing little Tykes basketball. I'm not thinking about college, right? You want to have those healthy conversations with each other, but you also want to make sure that they are within bounds, right? Not trapping your student in the car and locking the doors and saying, "Tell me everything that you talked about in your college counseling meeting right now," right? That's not healthy. That's not healthy, right? So something that we've recommended in the past is scheduling a designated time throughout the week, maybe an hour or so, where students and the parents or the guardians are open and can talk freely about the college counseling process, right? And where you are in it, what you're planning to do, what are your next steps. And so when you ask those questions, and then once that time is done, you can move on to other things in life. So please don't allow this journey to dominate the conversation, because there's so many other things, like being together. You're juniors, right? Like, you got 2 more years of this, of Cary Academy, the place that you have called home for a while, and you're gonna be moving on to somewhere else, right? Like, that is adorable. Do that, right? Do a lot of that. And you know, the college journey will take care of itself. You'll be earnest in it. You have your college counselor to help you with that, but make sure there's a lot of hugging, please. We appreciate that. Boom, 8:01. I was almost there. But thank you all. We really appreciate your time and coming out tonight. Are we going to take some questions? We do some questions? Okay. Okay, yeah. We'll take some questions from the audience. If you are so brave, if you feel like it's for the good of the order. If not, we're also going to wait for a few minutes down here if you want to have a one-on-one conversation. Going once. Going to, oh, yeah. So the question was, there will practice ACT in the spring. All the juniors, the current juniors, everyone sitting in here, this past spring, there was a practice SAT and a practice ACT. So if you missed those, that's totally fine. They don't go to colleges. They're not going anywhere. They were strictly for practice. So you had that you had that exposure, and now you're going to be going into the PSAT, which is in October. Now is the time to talk if you want to have a conversation with us, or if you've already developed a plan, to start thinking about when are you going to take your first official one. Usually that's around in the testing timeline Q&A, FAQ, we'll talk about that, but typically that's around November or December of junior year. Could change based on timeline, but that's typical of most students. All right, well, we're not going to hold you. If you do have additional questions that you want to talk with us, we'll be down here. Otherwise, have a safe evening home.